say. wake up and not having a headache the first time. No, I'm gonna get ready to present my entire course, so I've got to do some prep. So I know why, because 3 times, it's not hard. So I've got to, I'm probably gonna do it next week. Not much, I don't think. Try to avoid a working horseback.
All right, we'll get started. Today is Thursday, February 27th. This is the regular Board of Directors meeting. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I would like to ask Director Wood to lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Metro Cable announcement. The open session meeting is videotaped for cablecast on Metro Cable 14 replay on Monday, March 2nd at 3 p.m. and Tuesday, March 3rd at 9 a.m. on Channel 14 webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. The open session meetings are also available for viewing on the district's website at www.metrofire.ca.gov. I wanted to make one announcement regarding action item number 2. It has been removed from the agenda. This is now the public's opportunity to discuss matters of public interest within the district's jurisdiction, including items on or not on the agenda. Madam Clerk, are there any speakers?
There are no speakers this evening.
Moving on to the consent items. Are there any questions?
Madam Chair, I move the consent items.
Great. We have a motion and a second. Will you please call roll?
Director Gould.
Aye.
Wood.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Sailors.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
And Barnes.
Aye.
Sheets.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Great. Moving on to presentation items. Amanda Thomas, Chief Financial Officer, and Ingrid Shipley?
Pipeline.
Gotcha. Fiscal year 2018-19 annual report.
Okay, good evening, directors, Chief Harms, Amanda Thomas, Chief Financial Officer. And I am here to introduce the presentation of the fiscal year 2018-19 annual reports, including the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or CAFR, which provides a thorough and detailed presentation of the district's financial condition. With this fiscal year 18-19 CAFR, the district has now prepared a CAFR for each of the last 6 fiscal years, with the 5 previous reports all receiving the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association. And the fiscal year 18-19 CAFR has also been submitted for consideration. I'd like to thank the staff in the Finance Division for all their efforts, without which doing a report like this would not be possible. And I'd also like to acknowledge all of the contributions made by staff in other divisions of the district. The CAFR was audited by the district's independent financial auditors, Richardson and Company. And in addition to the financial audit, the auditors also issued compliance reports related to internal controls, which are included in your packets. I'll be turning it over to Ingrid Scheiplein from Richardson to present the results. But before I do, I wanted to note that the numbers that she'll be discussing are presented at a high level, and they include certain activities like IGT and leased properties that we present separately for budgeting purposes. With that, I would like to thank Ingrid and her team for their professionalism and their partnership, and I will turn it over to her.
Welcome.
It should.
Make magic happen.
Good evening. I'm here to present the results of the 2019 audit of the district. I'm going to touch at real high level. If you have questions as I go through, please feel free to stop me at that time. So the reports that we issued as a result of our audit include an opinion on the financial statements. We also issued a governance letter containing certain required communications. We issued a report on internal control and compliance, and a report on the appropriations limit. I'm going to highlight the results of all of those reports. So as far as overall results and observations, we issued a clean or an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, indicating that they're fairly presented in accordance with required accounting principles. Pleased to report we had no adjustments as a result of the audit. And I emphasize that because it's very rare for this large of an organization to have no adjustments. And I think that that is a tribute to Ron in particular, your controller, that does an excellent job of identifying all of the closing entries. You know, him and his staff have done an excellent job. And as some of you may know that have been on the board a while, this has not always been the case. I mean, at some point in time, there was a large number of adjustments. So this is definitely a great accomplishment to have no adjustments. So overall, the accounting records were very clean. Also, as part of our audit, we evaluate the internal controls that are in place, and we determined that the district has good internal controls in place. Any recommendations that we've made in the past have all been addressed. So as far as the financial highlights, I'm just going to touch on some of the high-level changes. You'll see that property tax revenues overall increased $7.7 million. They were slightly higher than your budget by about $500,000. Charges for service decreased $8.4 million, but that's primarily because of the lower money from the state through the IGT program for the Medi-Cal transports, just based on the availability of funds. Salaries and benefits decreased overall about $15.9 million, and that's mainly due to the lowering of both the pension and the OPEB liability, and we'll look at this a little bit closer on a later slide. Services and supplies decreased $12.4 million, and that's primarily related to the IGT program, shows up as both revenue, and the portion that you send to the state shows up as an expense. So overall, that program was lower in revenue and expense. If you look at just the general fund itself, revenues exceeded expenses by $12.2 million, but that's before the refunding. The refunding reduced the general fund balance by $25 million, but we'll look at that also in a later slide. And wanted to point out that this $12.2 million positive was actually better than what you had budgeted by about $14 million. So overall, your general fund itself is in a healthy position. Looking at your unrestricted net position, which is basically like the equivalent of equity of the organization, shows an unrestricted deficit of $653 million. But that is mainly due to the fact that the pension and the OPEB liabilities that didn't used to have to be on your books are now on your books, and that's driving that negative. And then also, as I mentioned, back in November, the district early retired $25.5 million of the pension bonds, the Series C bonds. So this slide is a snapshot of the equity section, and so you'll see in number format some of the numbers that I was referring to. So the first line item there, the investment in capital assets, that's basically your facilities and your infrastructure. It's not spendable. $74 million. The $7.9 million are amounts that are restricted, mostly impact fees that are restricted for capital purposes, and then the unrestricted is the amount I was referring to earlier with the negative $653 million. But keep in mind that, as your CFO pointed out, these numbers are highly combined and they include all of the assets and liabilities. And so when you look at your financial information, during the course of the year, you're looking at it on more of a fund basis, which doesn't include the pension and the OPEB liability. So that's why these numbers may look quite different than what you see during the year. So this is a snapshot of the liability section. So you can see your pension liability is $430 million, your OPEB liability $207 million. Those liabilities actually decreased during the year for a couple different reasons. Your pension liability, overall, just the interest earnings and contributions exceeded the annual costs that the actuary calculated. The decrease in the OPEB liability is really just a function of changing your discount rate or the assumed rate that those assets are earning, and that caused a drop in the pension or in the OPEB liability. This is a snapshot of the income statement, and again, this is highly summarized and it is full accrual. You'll note that, as I mentioned earlier, the $7.7 million increase in taxes. You'll see the charges for services going from $80 million to $72 million. That $8 million reduction, as I referred to earlier, is the IGT program. That increase that you're seeing in other revenues of $5.7 million, that's mostly attributable to receiving 2 helicopters that were donated. It shows up as both revenue and an asset. So it's $3 million there. And then on the expense side, the salaries and benefits, you'll see, went down by $15 million. And that is almost entirely attributable to the fact that the pension and the OPEB liabilities decreased, and so that affects the amount of expense that you record on the full accrual. And then the services and supplies, you'll see, went from $43 million down to $31 million. That $12 million decrease is primarily the IGT. And so overall, if you look at that net income loss line item, so on a full accrual basis, you actually had a net income of $20 million, but really what's driving that is, you'll see I put the pension and OPEB expense down at the bottom there. So in last year, the pension OPEB expense was $65 million. It actually dropped by $18 million down to $47 million. So that is partially contributing to that net income. So overall, you had an income during the year compared to, you'll see last year had a net loss of $11 million. But most of these wide swings have a lot to do with the pension and the OPEB liabilities, because as we saw on the previous page, those are large liabilities, and any changes that occur in actuarial assumptions tend to cause really wide swings in your expenses as well. So we also issued a report on internal control and compliance, and that report indicates that there were no weaknesses in internal controls, and that the district has a good system of internal controls, and also concludes that the district complied with any laws and regulations affecting the financial statements. We also issued a report on containing certain required communications, and noted no significant audit adjustments, as I pointed out in the highlights. That letter discusses some additional information on the unfunded pension liability, and describes the fact that it decreased by $19 million during the year, and that those pension adjustments that affected the liability decreased your expense by $23.1 million. That letter also discusses some information on the unfunded OPEB liability, and that liability decreased by $14 million. You are partially funding that liability, and so you made pre-funding contributions during the year of $18 million, and that's in addition to making payments for retiree premiums of $12 million during the year. And then as a result of changes in the OPEB liability, those adjustments resulted in a decrease of expenses by $10.5 million. So with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions that you have, but maybe first of all, I'd like to thank staff basically for being well prepared for the audit, definitely making our job easier to come in and audit. They were well prepared, had everything available to us, so I really appreciate the assistance that they provided to us in the course of the audit.
Are there any questions? Okay, thank you for that information. Sorry, I said your name.
Oh, that's okay.
All right, second presentation item, fiscal year 2018-19 Community Annual Report.
Okay, good evening again. Amanda Thomas, Chief Financial Officer. So now I would like to present the fiscal year 2018-19 Community Annual Report. So as we just talked about, the CAFR is this comprehensive report that's this, thorough disclosure of all the financial information. It's very important for transparency purposes that we have that available, but we also recognize that not everybody would like to read a document that is this thick and full of this many numbers. So last year was the first year that the district produced what we're calling the Community Annual Report. And so we now have our second Community Annual Report for fiscal year 18-19. It comes in a full-size version and a smaller size version. And this is really, it's a report that's meant for the general public to sort of provide an overview of the finances, but also just in general an overview of the district. And I think it's a really nice way of making information accessible to folks who don't have a background necessarily in public finance, but still are interested in this information. Along with the CAFR, the Community Annual Report is available on our website. Obviously, it's also available in hard copy. And I really want to acknowledge and thank the two folks who put a lot of time, effort, and thought into this. So not unlike the CAFR, it takes a lot of people to produce the information and make something like this possible, but also not unlike the CAFR, there are two people who really deserve a lot of the credit, and they are here in the audience tonight. So it's Ron Empedrad, our controller, and Marie Jones. Ron is sort of the content, and Marie is the style, and some of the content. And they're really a great team, and I think have made this something really special that we're now doing on an annual basis. And I just wanted to note that that you may have noticed that each year there's a theme in the Community Annual Report. So the theme this year is training for service. And really to prepare to be able to do this and to get some of the images for it, both Ron and Marie spent some time at the Academy. And one of the two of them, I'm not going to say who, one of the two of them was brave enough to do the live fire training there. And I won't say who, but I'll just say that she was really glad she did it. And so if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them. But if not, that concludes my presentation.
Any questions?
Just a comment. Fine work. Fine work.
Beautiful.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Oh, sorry.
This is becoming quickly one of the best meetings that we have all year long. The work that you all do is just amazing, and I really hope the community grasps the importance of what this team is doing. And certainly our consultant, Ingrid, and your team, you can never go away. You always have to be here. We should just give you an office. And the team within the financing, I've been here long enough to remember these meetings were some of the darkest meetings that we would have, or we had to talk about internal changes. And to hear these things like clean reports, I still don't like the word good internal. I think they should be the best or awesome or other words. But I'm just so proud of you guys. It's incredible, as our job as electeds is to ensure that there's fiscal stability here. You make our jobs, we can sleep at night because of all the work you all do about managing the taxpayers' monies. And I could not be more proud when you guys come on these weeks and share with us your hard work. It's something to be very proud of. I'm so encouraged by what you do. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. It's a great team, and they make my job easy.
All right, moving on to action items. Action item number 1, award recommendation RFB 19-14 structural firefighting particulate blocking hoods and structural firefighting gloves. Mr. Jones.
Good evening, directors, Chief Harms. My name is Mark Jones. I'm the Logistics and Purchasing Manager for the district. I'm here tonight with an award recommendation for RFB 1914 structural firefighting particulate blocking hoods and structural firefighting gloves. Metro Fire recognizes the cancer risk to firefighters and is taking proactive strides to protect the health and safety of all personnel. In October of 2018, purchasing published a request for information, RFI 1812, for new technology in the manufacturing of structural firefighting particulate hoods and structural firefighting gloves. Manufacturers responded with their products, including samples and documentation. 10 styles of gloves and 5 styles of hoods were submitted for consideration. After careful review from the Metro Fire Safety Committee, 7 gloves and 4 hoods were selected to move forward for a wear test. A wear test was conducted by a selection of suppression personnel over the course of 8 months. The top 2 rated gloves and the top 2 rated hoods were selected to move forward in the formal bid process. So in December 2019, we published RFB 1914 for these 2 hoods and 2 gloves. We received submissions from 6 vendors. Since hoods and gloves had already been vetted out, the vendors that submitted were requiring just a low bid price for the selection. The vendors and products are Cascade Fire Equipment with the Initex Gray Hood 25 for $79.94. Mallory Safety and Supply with the Firedex H41 Interceptor Hood for $99. Ellen Curtis & Sons with the Firecraft Safety Phoenix Glove for $69 a pair. And Mallory Safety and Supply with the Firedex Pro Glove for $73 a pair. The Safety Division is going to supply all line personnel with 4 hoods with this new particulate blocking technology and 2 sets of gloves. In doing so, this will help the cleaning and rotation of these garments and reduce exposure to cancer-causing agents. $285,000 is currently in the safety budget earmarked for the purchase of the 4 hoods and the 2 sets of gloves for line personnel. After the initial purchase, the Safety Division will keep a stock of these items and submit a budget for routine replacements each year. So staff recommends that the board awards RFB 1914 to the vendors mentioned: Cascade Fire Equipment, Mallory Safety and Supply, and Ellen Curtis & Sons. And this concludes my report, and I'll answer any questions if I can.
Any questions?
Madam Chair, I'd move staff's recommendation.
Great, we have a motion and a second. Can you please call roll?
Director Gould.
Aye.
Wood.
Aye.
Kelly.
Aye.
Sailors.
Aye.
Clark.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Barnes.
Aye.
And Sheets.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, the second would be the California Special District Authority, CSDA nominations for the Sierra Network Seat C. Ms. Pania.
Good evening, directors. Before you, you have the opportunity to nominate someone for the CSDA board. This is a nomination that they ask for every year. There's 3 seats that rotate, and this year, seat C is up for nomination. The successful person will serve for the 2021-2023 term, and I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? I'll entertain a motion. For a second?
It's
No?
not something you need to take
Oh,
action
okay.
on. It's just an
FYI.
opportunity.
Okay.
If it is something you want to do, then it's out there.
Awesome. Okay, noted. All right, moving on to reports, President report. I have nothing to report. Fire Chief's report, Chief Harms.
Good evening, directors. I have a number of things that were written down here, but to start off, I just want to thank Amanda and her group in finance. I think as a new person coming in 3.5 years ago and trying to figure out how the finances ran here, Amanda did a great job of being able to sit down with me and kind of break some of the bad habits I had coming from a city. But also at the same time, what I realized was both Amanda and Ron and the staff had such a great grasp of the flow of money. And by doing that is how does the funding come in? Where are we at? What are our liabilities? What are those opportunities that we've had? I know in the very beginning it was challenging for her to deal with me. I asked for what are we going to do in 5 years, but what are those things that we could plan out? Again, today, it was one of those things of listening to an outside auditor come in. Director Gould, much like you had said, in my past life, I've lived through a number of things that didn't go very well, or controls on finances that did not go well. I just really think that the leadership that Amanda and her group provides, and then the accountability of coming in and feeling very comfortable within the organization, saying, hey, this is where we're at, these are the things that are important. I still see that our pension and our OPEB things are those liabilities that are out there. But as we continue to move forward, it was said earlier in the Finance Committee about the importance of decisions that were made probably 9-10 years ago of funding the OPEB and being able to be ahead of that for moving forward. So to all of you, thank you. Thank you for what you all do in the finance side of it. The other one was Marie and Ron. Last year, they came up and said, we want to do a community annual report. This is what we're thinking about. And it was like, okay, I had I would have to say, very low expectations, and it totally exceeded that portion of it. And then we thought, okay, this year, let's see what they can do. And again, they did just a tremendous job. And we talk a lot about transparency and being able to say, hey, this is a snapshot of the organization, but a way that anybody could pick it up and read it and understand it. And if they want more information, where to go for that. So again, Marie and Ron, thank you for doing this portion of it. Both of them have plenty of work, and it would have been very easy to say, my schedule's full. But as Metro employees, just going above and beyond all the time. So thank you guys for doing that. Chris Green is in the front row here. We changed the PAD last meeting, and he was promoted on February 14th to Assistant Chief on A shift. Congratulations, Chris. He was acting in that position. We made it official. Also on the 14th, Battalion Chief Sean Daly was promoted, and he was assigned to Battalion 14 on the A shift. We have a few recruitments out there, facilities technician. We have some special ops battalion chief position that Chief Green, when was promoted, vacated, EMS day captain, EMS shift captain, and a training day captain. So a little bit of movement happening in the organization, all very good. On February 18th, we had a 2x2, which we went over and met with the county of Sacramento. We talked about Molly and Moxie, mobile integrated health, fire service in the Natomas area, airport operations, the Jackson Highway corridor, and we went out a little bit ahead of time and showed them the annual report and the community annual report too. I'm sure Director Jones will talk about that more, but it was just a very positive meeting. It was something that we hadn't done that was brought forward under Director Jones as president to start meeting with the county, and I think those have been just really great 2x2 meetings over there. On the 19th, we had a meeting here, and it kind of clicks into what was brought forward with the hoods and the gloves and what Mark had brought forward. We had a personal protective equipment one-day conference here, and they absolutely packed the room with over 100 some folks. We had a number of vendors that were here, but we also had a number of people that would say experts. And the conversation, and it has been an interesting one to watch the conversation about exposure and reducing exposure. Very early on, a number of people came out with different hoods and gloves, and we were able to kind of wait a little bit to see what was going to be tested, what was the best standard. Mark Jones and his group truly looked at what is maybe not the lowest price, but what is going to provide the best protection, and how do we manage that. What happened and why there was 2 gloves and 2 hoods was that as we went through a wear test, people had the ability to say, hey, I really like this one, or I really like this one over here. And instead of forcing somebody to say, hey, you have to have just the one, or you just have to have the one glove, is that we bought 2 of each. Now, I'm sure for Mark and his group over there, they were like, oh, now I'm stocking more stuff. But when you look at protective equipment and you look at look at gloves and diversity of gloves and the ability to use them, whether you're on a truck company or on an engine company, we really feel that it's important that you have the ability. Some people felt that the hoods, if you had hair, had a certain sound. If you didn't have hair, it had a certain sound. So the ability for Mark and his group over there, we like doubled his workload, but also at the end of the day, we're getting the best protection and the best equipment for the members that are out there. So Mark, thank you for doing that out there and about. Couple other things, after the protective clothing, we hosted a 2-day health and safety officer program and an incident safety officer, and both of those programs were certified. We had one here and one at 106. The really neat thing about holding them here and being the sponsor is that a number of our members that wouldn't have gotten that opportunity were able to stay at home and go to a 2-day class and become certified. We held on the 24th, on last Monday, we had our bi-monthly executive staff meeting where myself and the deputies meet with the city fire chief and the deputies, which are always very productive. And then yesterday, we had our labor management meeting. We talked a lot about the medics, flex medics, Medic 224, and some coverage with that, and some changes in the staffing document. Last month, the last thing to talk about was that we went through the strategic plan, and I had talked about that I wanted to keep the strategic plan alive. So it's not something that is talked about. In a year, we come back and review it and say what things were done or what things were not done. I'm still trying to figure that out, but one of the things that I said is that once a month or so, we should have some information of where we're at and if we're making progress. One of the areas that was a strategic element was people of Metro Fire, about the health and well-being. We had an individual that she specializes in, basically she's calling it Heart Fit. And we had an opportunity for her to come in, and she did a presentation in the morning and then a presentation in the afternoon, and discussed overall fitness and how do you make it to retirement. And what were some of the strategies and what are some of the things to be able to do to finish a career strong. Again, we held that here, and then we held it a second time over at the 21, so that a number of folks had the opportunity to come in and kind of listen to a program. Recruitment and retention, we have an administrative specialist. We've had recruitment with interviews with firefighter paramedic, a lateral firefighter paramedics, and there were some interviews that were completed with that, and also an internal, external announcements and looking at facility techs. We've been working with the local EMS county and talking about a number of issues as far as EMS service delivery and with the ambulance. Jeff Fry, during our 2x2, has been working with looking at fire and EMS coverage on the Jackson Highway corridor. And as that development is building out, is the revenue mechanisms that are in place for not only for station and a station development for the personnel, and then having some type of security that is in place that if the economy slows down, is there ways that we can make sure that the revenue stream to maintain the staffing in those stations continues on? And Jeff has been working a lot on that. Chief Bridge has been working with what's called Deccan International and looking at our deployment and our coverage of our ambulances and our medics. And by looking at a software program that says, here's a snapshot of where you're at today. If you add additional medics, here are some changes in response times, and it's a kind of a color-coded green, yellow, and red, and how do we get rid of the red? Where would you put those medics at? How would we manage those medics? How would we manage those medics in the future? And we're really looking at that and looking at next year's budget and saying, how can we make an impact of the workload of the ambulances that we have out there? The last thing is just the community outreach, K through 12 engagement with the Milo and Moxie program. We've provided over 4,800 kids just in the first couple months here of the year, and there's additional 600 students that are already scheduled for March, which I believe we're going to have the first and second graders that are starting to add into that program also. That ends my report, and I'll have, unless you have any questions for me.
Any questions? All right, great. Moving on to operations report. Chief Bridge.
Okay, good evening, directors. My name is Eric Bridge, Deputy Chief Operations. Relatively short report, but I did want to update you on a few things. And as Chief Harms had mentioned, that we're working with this predictive modeling platform to identify some areas that we can take some of the workload off of our busier units. And our busier units seem to be increasing all the time. So when I talk about busy units, and I'll give you some numbers here for Medic 24 again, as they seem to stay at the top. But we have, we have 24 units out in the field, and 20 of those are working on a 24-hour basis, and about 14 of those 20 generally will fill their day close to 12 hours between calls at the hospital. So it's a busy, busy unit, because it doesn't include the time that they're at drill. It doesn't include the other times that they're doing things. So these numbers are increasing. It used to be about 8 units, and then it was 10 and 12 over the years, and now we're up around 14 of our busiest units now that are 24-hour units that are doing those types of numbers. So it's just, we're being able to put some data to it now. It's stuff that we know is going on, and we hear it. It's time to do something. So we are looking at that predictive modeling plan. So we're excited about what it's showing us. Now, again, our next challenge will be the budget piece on how we're going to make it work. 2 weeks ago, when we had the board meeting, we've run about 4,000 calls again, so the numbers are staying relatively consistent there. They're creeping up gradually. Medic 24 had 206 responses, and Engine 109 with 188. So just to give some context to that, it's about 15 calls a day for the medic and about 13 for the engine. And so when we talk about 15 calls for the medic and 15 calls for an engine, we're talking about an 8-hour day versus, or a 10-hour day versus about a 3-hour day. That's the difference because of the time at the hospital and the time they spend it, waiting for beds to open up and things. So I'm just trying to provide some context on that, because someone go, that's a busy engine. And it is, very busy engines too. But when you're on an ambulance, it's quite a bit. So also wanted to just kind of update you a little bit. Everybody's talking in the news about the coronavirus. So what are we doing about it? Well, we're doing everything we can. We believe we've taken an extra step at our dispatch, our communication center, where we've added some screening processes. And we just updated that again today. We used to ask about if you've been out into China in the last 14 days. Now it's have you been out of the country in the last 14 days. So these are the types of calls we take if it's applicable to the call taker and to the caller. We ask that, and if so, it's relayed to our units in the street who are equipped with all the N95 and the proper screening. So when in doubt, put the mask and the goggles on and the gown. So everybody's aware. We're staying in close contact with the CDC. Chief Law and the EMS division are doing a great job of keeping everybody updated. So as things come our way, we relay them out to the members, and we'll keep you posted too as much as we can. So also supporting our brothers and sisters in Porterville. So unfortunately, that tragic accident that happened there, we've been able to support that. Tomorrow is a big service that they're having, and we're sending an engine company with 4 of our members down there for that service. So I'm happy to see them be able to support. Andy Whaley, Captain Whaley's been a big helper with them as well. He's represents CPF and part of the California Fire Foundation. Has been down there for pretty much for the last week. So assisting the family and the firefighters and everybody with the process that goes on with that. So my hat's off to Captain Whaley. And then lastly, I just wanted to say thanks to Molly Meyer. She was my assistant for 4 years, but she's been here for about 15 years. So anyway, the good news is she left us a good replacement. So I should be okay. I'll be lost for a little bit. If I seem a little dazed, that'll be why, but she was fantastic. So I wish her and her family well in their move to the Northwest. So do you have any questions for me? Because that ends my report.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
All right. Firefighters Local 522, Mr. McGoldrick.
Good evening, directors, chief. Mike McGoldrick, Metro Vice President, Local 522. The tragedy of being last in line is all my reporting items have already been covered. I do have one trick up my sleeve. I'm very grateful for the agency's assistance in getting crews down there, including working in conjunction with Local 522 and CPF with Captain Whaley. He's on the last alarm team, supported, it's through the Fire Foundation, but it's CPF. I'll give you a little detail of his activities. He went down the night of the fire. 5:30 in the morning, the next morning, they were in the detail to escort the body out of the building, which is a pretty monumental task for those guys. They've participated and organized a rosary, 2 funerals, 1 additional funeral for one of their veterans that also passed away in the same timeline. And they're rehearsing now for tomorrow's large memorial service for them all. And it's been a continuous effort all week, and I really want to say he's done a great job for us representing our department. I'm very proud of the crew that's going down tomorrow. They're also friends of some of the victims of that fire, so it's important for us to support and get them down. If you have any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Moving on to the committee and delegate reports. The executive committee met today. We had 1 change to the committee appointees, and Director Jones was nominated to be on the Finance and Audit Committee, and that is all I have to report. Moving on to communications, JPA, Chief Casantini.
Good evening, Board and Fire Chief Harms. Chief Shannon is out tonight, so I'm going to fill in briefly. The Communications Center is now starting to implement Phase 2 of the WestNet project. As a reminder, Phase 1 of the project dealt with the station alerting, and Phase 2 is the automatic voice dispatching system. The goal of that system is to increase the speed of dispatching calls to our members. Thank you.
I'm assuming you're going to be reporting out on the California Fire Rescue Training JPA as well.
That's correct. Thank you. The CRFTA Training JPA has not met since January 16th. The next meeting is scheduled for April 16th across the hall at 4 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Reporting out for the Finance and Audit Committee.
I can
Okay,
handle.
perfect.
Yeah. The Finance and Audit Committee met this evening, and we have chosen Director Orzali as chair for the committee and Director Wood as the vice chair. We went through a great presentation by our CFO, Amanda Thomas. Our CERB account is up to 48 million. It's only been in existence for 6-7 years, and it's a deep cut into the 240 owed. So we're making, I think, significant progress over time on that. We have our reserves project. Our reserves are projected to turn in at about 13.6% at the end of the fiscal year. It's better than it was, and we still hope to make it better. Let's see. And we've added I'm sorry, that's regards our regular meeting. Nothing further, and we will meet April 16th, whoops, correction, March 26th at 5:30 p.m. in these chambers.
Great, thank you. Moving on to Policy and Committee, Director Gould.
No report.
Right, before we move into board questions and comments, I just want to, at the very end, before we go into closed session, take a moment of silence to observe for the 2 fallen firefighters. So, Director Barnes. Yep.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tonight, it's kind of an interesting chain of events what's happened with my family and what we've been doing. This has been a great run, but tonight I am having to resign from my seat as we have moved out of the district. You know, when I first started in public safety in my day job 22 years ago, you know, we've always had this camaraderie with the firefighting industry, and then being able to come here on the board 5 years ago has been one of the best relationships that I've formed, not only with the admin staff, the leadership in this board, and it's something I'll never forget. But, you know, growing up and ever think I'd be sitting in a place like this and serving my community as a board, as an elected official, I would have said, no way. We came from humble beginnings. My wife and I both have sacrificed both. She's also in law enforcement for many years, and I got a picture on my phone one day of a house and said, I want this house. And I think of all the nights I've missed, you know, for call-outs, funerals, and I was like, we got to do it. So I found out that if you move out of the district, you can't serve in your seat. So then I tested John Laver's skills as counsel, and he failed me. And we did not find a loophole for me to be able to continue to serve. which is very disappointing to me because I've enjoyed every minute of this opportunity. So tonight, you know, I talk about why I started and why I came here, and the service before self, it's on the wall behind us, is something that resonates with me because that's what I like to do, is serve my community. Also love to serve my family. But I just want to say a few thank yous tonight. Everybody's been there and supportive, helping me get here to this point. But John, thank you again for researching everything that you did and always being there for me over the years and helping me. It's been great. I appreciate that friendship that we've gone. Chief, your leadership was a game changer, and I really said that. When you came in here and I got to see you, and I actually learned from you from a leadership standpoint. We have several conversations. We'll talk about fire and board stuff, and then we immediately change hats and we talk about leadership because that's something I love. So I'll be forever grateful for the conversations. I look forward to future conversations with you, so thank you. Board, I'm telling you, the friendships that we've had some interesting meetings over the past few years, some very challenging meetings, but I would encourage you to continue to do that. Some of those most challenging meetings we had, we actually disagreed with each other, were some of my favorite meetings. Because I think it shows a community, shows the membership that we really care about it, and we're not just shaking our heads saying, yeah, we all agree. So I appreciate that, and I continue to encourage you to do that, and I guarantee that we'll continue our friendships long after this meeting. Melissa, when I came on and you educated me on how to become a board member, it made it so easy. And I have honestly said, you've heard the saying, and people wear it out, if I can do it, anybody can. And if Melissa can train me to get up here and learn how to work and navigate the board and the agendas, anybody can. So thank you for everything you've done. Again, I look forward to talking with you in the future as well. Local 522, first class, always has been. Mike, we talked earlier today. And the membership and that continue to provide the service and your leadership from the union board. It's great to hear the actual friendship and partnerships that you actually have, working relationships. I work in the public safety sector, and it's not always, you're not always going to agree, but it's never been as professional as it has been. And so I thank you for you and the membership and the support that you've always shown me, especially over the past 5 years. To the members, we heard it here tonight about Porterville. It's a dangerous job, right? You work on holidays, weekends, and when that bell rings, you just go and you don't even think about the dangers along the way. So thank you. Take care of each other. Continue to take care of each other. And I hope you all are going to end up retired for as long as that you've actually worked. Professional staff, Amanda, your team, and everybody that keeps this organization going, you are truly the unsung heroes of this operation, because it's behind the scenes work that doesn't get all the glamour and the KCRA 3 interviews. But it's because of what you do when the strike teams go out and you gather the money to keep us running, to put us in a position like this. This report, again, just shows how we're such a first-class organization. That's what makes it tough for me to leave, is we are clicking on all cylinders, and it's fun to watch. To the community I served in Division 9, I really appreciated the opportunity to thank them for electing me. I remember the night I was sitting in my office at work on graveyards and the results came in. And my phone started going off, and I was like, now what? What do I do now? But it's been a great opportunity to serve them, listen to their voice, and continue to serve. It's something that's near and dear to my heart, is giving back to the community. And I try and display it for my daughter, who's sitting in the back. She turned 11 on Sunday. She's a strong woman. I assume she'll be sitting on boards like this moving forward. But I try and demonstrate to Gianna all the time that it's not just about us, it's what you can do and how you can give back. So this has been a great ride, and I tell you, it was the toughest call and the toughest notifications I had to make to my colleagues. Hey, this is actually finally happening, but I've had a fun ride. I'm not gonna go away. Won't be the last time you hear me running for something, guaranteed. So thank you for everything, and thank you for the opportunity to talk tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Director Jones.
Director Barnes, congratulations on your new future. Best of luck on all your endeavors. I know you will be 101% successful, and thank you so much for your work on this board.
Thank you. It means a lot.
Thank you very much. Well, talk about a hard message to follow. Well done, sir. I'd like to thank the chief for the dashboard look and update vis-a-vis our strategic plan. I'd like to thank staff and chief again, as well as our county counterparts, for a very productive 2x2 meeting. It's always beneficial to have the face-to-face meetings And you can really cut through a lot of issues and get to the heart of matters, and that means we can get to solutions, and that's wonderful. And lastly, I would like to thank Melissa and staff for providing the community annual report. I stole a lot of copies of these, and they will be distributed at my upcoming annual meeting with my community members. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Director Clark.
Director Barnes, I echo the sentiments of Director Jones. We're going to miss you. It's been really good working with you, and lots of luck. You know, like you said, you're not going to go away, so I'm not going to, feel like you're, right. I also want to thank CFO Jones. Amanda Thomas. And her wonderful crew, call it a crew, but it's your division. And you guys did a wonderful job. I really appreciate these booklets. I mean, I like the cartoons and all that kind of stuff on it. It really makes us understand. It's a good overview of what, our financial situation is. And you guys do a wonderful job. Thank you. And I also want to send my condolences to the family and the firefighter family over in Porterville. I know they all say it's a family. It's not just their, the immediate family, but it's everybody suffers. So, and once again, like we were reminded, it's a dangerous job. Sometimes we don't, we lose sight of how dangerous firefighting is. It's, sometimes you think the guys just, hit little grass fires or whatever, but, you can easily lose your life. So I would like to send my condolences to the guys in Porterville. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Director Wood.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Just want to start off again as well as saying thoughts and condolences out to everyone out in Porterville, and safe travels to our crew that are going down there tomorrow for the memorial, and look forward to them getting back from that. Chief Green, congratulations on your promotion. Marie and Ron, thank you for the work that you guys have done with the community report. It's actually awesome, and I also enjoy giving that out and having people ask for it as well. Amanda, you and Ron, again, great job, wonderful work. I appreciate you being able to take very dense material and explain it like you're explaining it to a fourth grader. It's very good. It's a rare skill to have to be able to do that. And last, Jim, it's been a pleasure. You are one of those rare individuals whose actions back up their words, and your example to all of us up here, to your daughter, is actually, it's amazing. You're one of those rare people that has a very high sense of integrity, and your optimism, your personality, and your dedication will be missed. Thank you.
Director Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jim, thank you for your continued service. It started well before you came to this dais, and it's just another extension of it. And I actually, frankly, look forward to hearing your name again. And I know that it will happen, and I, for one, will be right there. This community is in a way better place when you're serving the community than not. And so I'll do everything I can to continue. You make such good decisions. So thank you for your time here. It's been a pleasure, and you do so many things beyond the work of this dais that I don't think people totally understand. And I would not be happy if I lived in Division 9, because you're going to have to go deep in the bench to find somebody of this caliber. It's just, I don't know where you're going to do that at. So good luck to that part of our service area, because I think it's going to be a tall task. And like I said, I'm honored to call you friend and colleague. Beyond that, I think a lot of accolades have gone out this evening to all of the wonderful staff. Whether you got to report or not, we still think you're incredible. Absolutely incredible. A lot of the things you see here and you heard tonight are because we have this incredible team at Metro Fire at all different levels in the organization. That's pretty rare. You know, I think we've got so many stars here. It's incredible. I mean, we could take on the Yankees or the Dodgers or whoever wins those silly things. But and then the president wants me to mention the Giants. I'd be remiss if I didn't say the Giants. But I'm proud and honored to be associated with all of you. It's just a really wonderful thing. And clearly tonight, I know we're going to end in a moment of silence, but I am so grateful that we have this family that can go down and wrap their arms around those that are suffering, not just the families that have lost their loved ones, but the entire community. I can tell you as a survivor of those experiences, it's unbelievable. And it stays with you forever. And so kudos to all of you for doing that. It makes a huge difference. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Director Sailors. Okay. Director Kelly.
I think it's been said more than once or twice, but what I would like to say, Jim, is it's been a pleasure. Thank you for the service that you provide to the Sacramento Sheriff's Department, and thank you for coming and hanging out with us for as long as you did.
I'd like to thank everyone for the presentation and the reports. Those were very wonderful, and this is awesome. I love it because that is such a long report, and it does dumb it down so that I can understand it. So I appreciate that. Congratulations, Chief Green and other staff on their promotions. Director Barnes, best wishes. Can't wait to find out what your walkout song's going to be. You were the first person to recognize me and help me support when I was elected to this board, so I really appreciate the friendship and all the guidance that you have. And at this time, I'd like to observe a moment of silence in honor of Portville Fire Department Captain Raymond Figueira and firefighters Patrick Jones, who tragically lost their lives battling a fire in the library in the city of Portville on Tuesday, and our thoughts and prayers are with the family and the fire department. Thank you. We're moving into closed session.
Fine job, Figueroa.
Figueroa.